Welcome to the second part in this mini-series about the history of Camelot Theme Park. Now, the first episode that was out a couple of days ago was around about the 80s, so the early years of the park. This episode is around about the 90s, where the park kind of peaked, and then there will be a third episode around about the 2000s where things kind of went downhill rather rapidly. Now, as with the previous episode, I will do all the usual stuff. There will be newspaper articles, there will be footage, there will be photos, there will be celebrities, there will be TV adverts where I can find them, and some rather interesting stories. Let's get into it, shall we? I'm going to start a little bit quiet in 1990. I did find a competition in a newspaper to win tickets for Camelot. Now, clearly that has run its course and you can't even get into Camelot anymore. But it's a find the difference. Apparently there's 10. I can find 6. So I'm going to put this up and you can let me know how many you can find, because I can't find them all. I'm also not sure how long this ran for, but I did find volume 1, number 1 of the Camelot Chronicles. So I think they had a little magazine series thing, probably just a flyer they were handing out when you got in the park. But yeah, that started in 1990. And this was the first advert I could find from the park as well.
Behold, my magical kingdom of Camelot! All day long the magical Camelot goes on and on and on!
In 1991, nothing specific happened. If you've seen the first episode, you'll know I mentioned this guy and the fact that he's going to keep popping up. Timmy Mallet opened the park for 1991, and I've got a picture of him from his Facebook saying, he remembers it fondly. But yeah, that's about all that happened in 1991 apparently. So 1992 saw a few additions, nothing significant at this point. The first one was a Junior Dragon coaster. It was a small powered coaster, which when the park closed was relocated to Oakwood. Quite a lot of stuff went from Camelot to Oakwood, to be honest, but this was one of them. And then I also found a few other things listed in the newspaper. So there was a bird show, a magic show, and a puppet show. There's going to be a puppet show coming up in a few years' time, a rather well-known puppet, but this didn't mention him yet because he wasn't part of it. Now, interestingly, I did also find a newspaper clipping where apparently the park had applied for a drinks license. Now, it was rejected because there was some thought that this would jeopardise the safety of the children, which, I guess by today's standards, that's probably the sort of thing you would expect. Although you do get drinking in parks, so towers and stuff, you can buy a pint, and similarly at Thorpe Park. But yeah, definitely there was, I think in the 90s when you see some old footage, there was definitely some rough periods. So yeah, evidently they just chose not to issue a license to the park. A couple of additions in 1993. The first one was, again, I said this in the first episode, there's lots of kind of roundabout style rides. So this one was the Human Cannonball. Again, very small kids carousel style ride that just kind of rotated around. The other one is a little bit of a mystery, and that is the Black Knight's Revenge. Now, I can't find any images or footage of this as far as I can tell, and please do correct me down below if I'm wrong. This was kind of like a ghost train style attraction, not quite a ghost train, but that kind of thing. There is a picture of Jeremy Beadle standing outside of it. Well, that's about as far as I can go in terms of actually finding anything about it. And then I think later on there's another name that I think is the same attraction, so a bit like the roller coaster that was renamed about 40 times. I suspect this got renamed too. But if you know more, please do let me know. But yeah, Black Knight's Revenge was added in 1993. And the last story I could find is a little bit of a sad one. So apparently 2 wild boars escaped from the park, so they obviously did have a kind of animal farm area. One of them was captured in the park and returned back to its pen, but the other one escaped and unfortunately was shot and killed on the M6. Right, now 1994 was a massive year in the UK. In fact, it became known as the year of the coaster. So we got the big one in Blackpool, we got Nemesis in Towers, and we got Shockwave in Drayton Manor, and Camelot got Sooty and the Dragon. Get in. Now, I've seen a few pictures of the entrance to the park with the sort of Sooty, a large Sooty above the entrance. I'm assuming it was like not a cardboard cutout, like a wooden cutout. At first I thought it was photoshopped, but I guess back in the 90s probably not. So if you remember this and this genuinely was just a big Sooty above the entrance, then please let me know. But yeah, obviously they were part of Granada, so it kind of all ties in together that Sooty belonged to Granada Studios and therefore it came in. Now interestingly, there was also an episode of Sooty and Sweep in 1994 where they went to the park. So, you have them going around the park as well.
No, so it's a very nice car park as it happens.
Yes, but it's also a very empty car park. Look, there are no cars here.
Oh, well, yes, you see, that's probably because this place is... Whoa! It's closed!
And then we also got 2 more attractions. Now, I said this for last year, at Black Knight's Revenge. I wondered if that is this, because in 1994 we got the Dungeons of Doom, and again this has been described as a bit like a Ghost Train style attraction. I think I found some footage of this one where you're kind of going through in a car through this attraction. So I don't know if this is a rename of that previous attraction. Again, please do let me know if you know for sure. I doubt they would have had 2 very similar attractions opened so close together, but you never know. And the other one that we got was the Rack. Now, this looks quite unique, and in fact, it's a standard model. I don't think they exist much nowadays, but it's a Vekoma Canyon trip. Quite a visual ride. I am curious if it actually had any thrill to it at all. I'm sure many of you probably rode the ride. I, as I say, never even visited the park, so I do not know, but I would love to hear what you think. I look at rides like that and I just think that seating and the kind of restraints, I think of the Slammer, which got absolutely slated for being uncomfortable, so I'm curious what this one was actually like, and I'd love to hear if you got on it. Now, 1995, now this was the park really hitting its stride. This was its peak because it had 500,000 visitors this year, and as you'll find, it's downhill from now on. But 1995, this was their peak. They did really well and they got their 500,000. Now they put in a new attraction in 1995 with Excalibur. As you'll find later on, there is an Excalibur 2, which is nothing like Excalibur. I mean, they've renamed rides many times and reused the same names, Nightmare being one of them. So anyway, the original Excalibur was a Dreamboat ride. Now, I mean, you've probably seen these. It's like a pirate ship, but it's an enclosed pirate ship and it does a full 360. So that was Excalibur that was added in 1995. They also added a rare breeds farm. And now, I say that, and I've got a leaflet off them saying, hey look, come see our rare breeds farm. The leaflet shows pigs and chickens and, you know, other animals that aren't particularly rare, unless the specific, I mean it says rare breeds, right? So maybe it is, this type of chicken isn't very common. But yeah, basically they had some new animals in their farm. They did add another attraction in the form of a coaster known as the Sorcerer. This was a little Pinfari coaster. Doesn't seem to have been particularly popular though. Didn't hang around for too long. You know, there was other bigger coasters that towered over it. So yeah, they added it, didn't last, off it went. And the park had another accident, kind of. An incident, shall we say, maybe not an accident, maybe that's the wrong word. The Dragonflyer, the diesel coaster that I mentioned earlier in the last episode, it broke down and 26 people had to be rescued because it was kind of stuck up. So I guess it was kind of like a car. Don't know why I didn't have a reverse. Could have just backed it up a little bit. I also found a reference to a charity event held at Camelot by, I think it was local B&Q staff, and they hosted a kind of It's a Knockout style attraction. It was just a charity event, so it's not a permanent fixture, but they obviously tried to do that kind of well-known game show to raise some money. Now, if you have some really fond memories of 1995 and money is not an object to you, then I did find the sort of leaflet, a brochure from this year on eBay for a steal at £800. Pretty sure nobody's going to pay that. Now moving on to 1996, that coaster that was renamed a number of times had a final rename, this time going from the Beast to Venom, and there was obviously a sort of snake theme about it. There's a picture of a guy with a snake around his neck. So this was the last name for that ride. Again, I don't think much changed. Actually, the article that I found says, this covered ride takes you on a mineshaft journey into the very lair of the Guardian and features some of the most amazing special effects of any ride in the country. I mean, I guarantee that's not true. I can't imagine, to be fair, back in the 90s, that probably wasn't much of a statement, but I am curious what those spectacular effects would be. As I've said already, if you remember any of this, please do let me know, because I can only imagine it's like a little green light that goes, ooh. Interestingly, I did find So I found a Facebook group for ex-employees of Camelot, and there was an image on there. It was like the operator manual for Venom. And inside that it had a list of staff names, and they were kind of broken down by here's the under 18s and here's the over 18s and here's people we don't know. And you know, I think that was to do with what different tasks they could do depending on their age, etc. Well, apparently I used to work there. I mean, I have no recollection of it, but you know, my name's on the list, so I worked at Camelot. The park added a 2-tier carousel, quite decent looking thing, known as Sir Lancelot's Charger. And this, well, I mean, it's a carousel and it's, you know, standard 2-floor effort. But yeah, as I say, it looked pretty decent for a carousel. And yeah. And the last thing I found for this year was a few images of some rally cars, because apparently the park was used as one of the stages in the Neil Howard Memorial Park Hall Rally. Now, one of the things when I started looking into Camelot, there was one attraction that I saw quite a few times because it was at the entrance and I just assumed it had been there since the beginning. Turns out it had not. It was added in 1997. Now, the park was split over different levels. So you entered up the top and then there was some attractions further down and then there was another bit that was raised up. But part of that, at the entrance, there was a series of 3 slides that would take you from that upper level down to the rest of it, and that was added in 97 and known as Pendragon's Plunge. Now, 2 of the slides were open and one of them was covered, and you basically got in a 2-man sort of inflatable dinghy thing and off you went down there. 2 of these slides were relocated to Gulliver's. Turns out I've been on them, didn't realise that's where they came from, and one of them I think was in such disrepair that it was just left to rot. So yeah, these were added in 1997. Now, there's a few things that you think of have just been there forever, or certainly I do, maybe I'm just getting old, I don't know. But one of them is Childline. Now, Childline, you know, I mean, it is what it says in the tin, right? It's a phone number to help children who, you know, need that support. But it was launched in 1997, and in fact, Jim McDonald from Coronation Street sort of launched it in Camelot. There you go. It seems the park was having a little bit of difficulty with crime in the 90s, because I found an article that was talking about particularly vehicle crime. So there was a lot of vehicles stolen, there was a lot of vehicles broken into, and in fact in 1997 alone, 25 cars were stolen from the car park. Now, again, probably times have changed. I mean, I don't think many vehicles had immobilizers, etc. back then. You obviously still get cars stolen nowadays, but it seems to be less of a thing. Or maybe I'm just don't pay attention to the news. Anyway, lots of cars were stolen from Camelot in 1997. And I found this one rather humorous. So, Excalibur, that I mentioned, the kind of pirate boat thing that goes all the way upside down. At the end of the season, when the staff were tidying up and sort of clearing out around about that ride, they found £200 in loose change at the bottom of that ride that had fallen out of everybody's pockets. I mean, that wouldn't work nowadays because everything's contactless and, well, you're not going to drop your iPhone, are you? So, staff made a wee bit of cash that year. Now, 1998 saw a change in hands yet again. So Granada Group got rid of the park and it became Prime Resorts that took it over. Now, they only added one attraction this year and it was called the Quintain. I think that's how you pronounce it, and it was a Huss flipper. Now, I found a tiny little picture in the newspaper of the ride in the background and the kind of knights at the front. I did find a very, very short clip of the attraction as well, but I did find a much better clip of it in another park. It didn't last very long. It was kind of a little bit out of place, and a lot of people said it didn't really fit in with the theme and, you know, just the style of attractions. So yeah, it was added, but it didn't hang about for very long. Now, rounding out this decade, 1999 had quite a lot going on. The first thing that was added was the Junior Jousting Horses, which is just a very simple track with sort of pairs of horses. Actually, I think it was a whole train of them, but basically pairs of horses that the kids went on and they sort of bounced along around this track, which I'm sure the kids found very, very enjoyable. I did find mention of it in a newspaper article, and what's interesting is that to the side of it, so it mentioned a few theme parks, and obviously Camelot, it mentioned this attraction. It mentioned Blackpool, and it said something about the big one's drop. The problem is they'd rotated the image, so it looks like the big one has an inversion, which, considering it's got like tiny little lap bars, would have been quite an interesting thing if it had happened. Right, 1999 also saw a rather unusual attraction added. It was hailed as, I think it was hailed as the world's first. and that was Roller Quest. Now, this was said to be like a baby brother to Laser Quest. You would basically go into this arena and you would put inline skates on, you'd have a special glove, and you had to kind of hit these targets as you went around the arena basically. So yeah, it was, interestingly, it was launched by two stars from Coronation Street, and that is Roy Cropper and Hayley Patterson. Does seem to be an odd choice for the park. You know, it's a medieval themed park and then they put in this modern computerized game. Not sure I see the connection. Just doesn't feel right. Now, I find this quite interesting because the park opened the season with a fireworks display, and it makes a thing in the paper about it being 5,000 fireworks. No point of reference. I was like, is that a big fireworks display? Is that a small fireworks display? Did a bit of Googling, and allegedly Disney's fireworks displays are around about 5,000 fireworks. Theirs are spectacular, so that must have been quite a show for a little park like Camelot. That is very impressive. Anyone heard of a boy band called Alive? No? Me either. But apparently they performed at Prince Charles's 50th, and they also performed at Camelot this year. Now, if you've got teenage children or you are a teenager, or you just like watching kids TV, you probably remember the Australian show The Wiggles. Well, The Wiggles came to Camelot and did a little show. Now, I did find a rather interesting promotion for tickets. So I think this year Blackpool did something on Father's Day where it's like dads go free when they go with a kid. Well, Camelot had done something similar where basically they had in September there was a promotion where it was bring your grandparents for free. So for every paying child, 2 grandparents could get in for free, which, I mean, that probably makes a lot of sense, right? I don't think there's many attractions that the grandparents would want to get on. Later on we'll cover, I found some prices for the park, which seem really cheap, but then when you do the inflation calculator, sort of what you'd expect. So, but yeah, they did a promotion to get grandchildren in for free. Right, so that is the second part in this mini-series, and that is, believe it or not, the heyday of Camelot, because the next episode, things start to go downhill rather rapidly. There's a lot of problems in the next decade, and ultimately the demise of the park. So if you've got any memories from this decade, please do let me know, and certainly any of the gaps in the knowledge there, because there's a few things that, as I say, I struggle to find information. So if you can fill in those gaps, please let me know down below. If you have enjoyed this one, make sure you hit that like button and do consider subscribing. I am on track to hit 10k, hopefully for the channel's 2nd birthday. Bit of a stretch, but I'm sure you guys can make it happen. I have been Chris, you have been watching Coaster Dad, and I shall see you in the next one. Adios.